Blog Talk Radio.
What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday. We are back again. Welcome to another information-packed episode of House Talk Pregame. I'm your host and family therapist and empowerment coach, Dr. Lauren Pitts. I'm joined every week by my two amazing co-hosts and former HBCU scholar-athletes, Jared Johnston and Ronnie Ransom. Our third co-host, my son, Andre Garlick. Andre's going to be with us, y'all. Y'all probably think I don't even have a son, but I swear that's him right there. There's one right behind me. You know the one that looks just like me? That he the male version of me. That's me, y'all. That's my baby for real. He does exist, and he'll be joining us sooner rather than later. For our team here at Pregame, it's all about family, y'all. Anybody that knows Dr. Pitts knows I live, breathe, and die family. But it's not just about our family here at Pregame. It's about your family, too, because week after week, we pride ourselves on shining the light on our HBCUs and provide tons of valuable information to help you and your family, student and professional athletes, and their families. And gotta love them, gotta love them, gotta love them. Our Heritage Sports Radio Network family takes the necessary steps to transform your lives and live the life you love living in more educated and empowered ways. Also, we want you to remember you can catch us on HSRN every Saturday right now at this time. We're on both networks at 11 a.m. And we're also on HSRN at 10 p.m. on Saturdays and then again on Sundays at 6 p.m. We have a great show lined up for you today. Tell them a little bit about it, Ron.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Pitts. So like Dr. Pitts said, we got an action-packed show today. We got a lot of things to talk about. And look, for those of you who've been rocking with Dr. Pitts all this time for her podcast, House Talk, know that Dr. Pitts talks about some very honest and brutal things. So during House Talk pregame, me, Dr. Pitts, and Jared, we're bringing, the current events that's going on in the world. It's a lot of things that's going on. It's been a crazy week again, a lot of news for HBCUs and stuff like that. So look, we're going to be talking about this, trying to give knowledge to everybody, make some discoveries, and share our truth. A lot of misinformation going on out there, so it's up to us to put out the positive information and the right information so we can keep our people updated on what's going on. We know you all care. We know you all are tired, and we're going to try to have some answers for you. It's time to optimize. Good morning, Jared.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to be back another weekend to share this opportunity with everyone. Once again, we always encourage call-ins and emails, however is most comfortable for you. You can call in at 515-605-4444, or you can email us at htpregame@gmail.com because we always would like to hear from you guys and hear your opinions on these topics that we discuss on a weekly basis. Back to you, Ronnie.
So each and every week, me and Dr. Pitts like to do something called Diagnosis of the Week. Being that me and Dr. Pitts are both mental health professionals, and Dr. Pitts being a clinician and me being a future clinician, it's important that we give honest and true information about mental health diagnosis, mental health disorders to our people of color, because oftentimes people of color are the ones who are marginalized the most, offered the lesser resources, and overdiagnosed with things that they have absolutely nothing to be diagnosed with. So Dr. Pitts is going to introduce our diagnosis of the week this week, which is we're focusing on, again, attachment disorders. Last week we talked about separation anxiety disorder, which is kind of a derivative of attachment disorders, but now we're going to focus on more of the overall general synopsis of attachment disorders. So take it away, Dr. Pitts.
So one of the things that I want to point out first and foremost is we are starting to see in response to COVID-19, but I would like to say I think it's appropriate here to give credit to our quarterback, my quarterback, Dak Prescott from the Dallas Cowboys, for demonstrating the courage and the strength that it took to announce to the world that he was having some mental health struggles And what you're seeing now in response to Dak's courageousness and in response to all of the mental health crises that we're experiencing as a result of COVID-19, the NFL, not saying that the NBA and the MLB aren't, but right now, NFL are really starting to come to the forefront and have more open discussion and vulnerable, transparent discussions about mental illness throughout the league. I saw a commercial yesterday with it looks like some sort of initiative that I believe it was the Kansas City Chiefs or Indianapolis Colts, excuse me. The Colts are doing that was really powerful, and it led in with, I don't know if he was the GM or the owner or whoever he was, talking about it. And then they had one of the players highlighting his struggle with mental illness. And then actually one of the platforms that I'm on, Talkspace, you'll see that they're showing athletes that are talking about mental illness and how important it is to put the stigma associated with mental illness to rest and to get the help that one needs. Because as you hear Ronnie and I say week in and week out, ignoring the problem is not going to heal you of your issues with mental illness. And, a big part of mental wellness is taking the proactive measures to make sure that you stay well. So today we're going to be talking about attachment. And I want to start out by just giving you a little bit of background knowledge on attachment theory. As I was telling the guys before we went live, I'm so intrigued by attachment theory that it was actually the foundational model that my dissertation research was conducted upon when I was doing doctorate work. Attachment theory involves the way you form intimate and emotional bonds with other people. Now, we all have those, whether it's with our parents, our whomever. We all have some of relationship. So there's going to be some form of intimacy and emotional connection that is either present or desperately needed. Psychologist John Bowlby developed the theory while studying why babies become so upset when separated from a parent. And you're going to hear Ronnie talk about that a little bit more and what that looks like. Babies need a parent or other caregiver to take care of their basic needs. Bowlby found that they use what he called attachment behaviors such as crying, searching, and holding on to their parent to prevent separation or to find a lost parent. The study of attachment in children laid the foundation for later research on attachment in adults, which Ronnie is going to touch on. What we know to be true is this. As you age, you develop your own attachment style based largely on the attachment behaviors you learned as a child. Well, you know what? We could dedicate a whole daggone show to what attachment looks like in black and brown persons all over this daggone country and around the world, particularly when the impact that slavery and the residual effects of slavery have had on us as a people and on our attachment styles. This attachment style can have a big impact on how you form relationships as an adult. So here you got all these women thinking that y'all just old, and the reality of it is y'all got attachment issues, and we're going to talk about it. But look, y'all know, Dr. Pitts, keep it fair. Sisters got a lot of attachment issues and stuff. They got daddy issues. So it ain't just the brothers. Everybody walking around with attachment issues and don't even know it. They're just thinking things like, oh, my God, he want a mom. Oh, my God, she's so emotionally needy. She's high maintenance. No. Clinical hat. There are some unresolved attachment issues. The other thing that you need to know about attachment is there are different attachment styles, and the attachment style involves your behaviors and interactions with others and how you form relationships with them. Attachment theory lets us know these styles are largely determined very, very early on in childhood. And just to give you the brief, I'm not going to go into detail, but check this. And Ronnie, you know this. Jared, we're going to school you. You listening? We want our viewers to know. Secure, versus insecure attachment. How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, my God, you know she insecure like a mug. You know he all insecure. Anxious versus preoccupied attachment. Oh, my God, don't leave me. Choco, y'all been with that female that, do I need to call the cops? Get you to leave me there, go on? Look, let's keep it real. Here y'all thinking it's because you gave it to her so good. But in reality, nevertheless, she like that with everybody. Why? Because she has attachment issues. She's afraid of letting go, or he, because don't act like y'all ain't killed up some folks. Because y'all didn't want to, if I can't have you, ain't nobody going to have you. She ain't going nowhere. Nowhere. Never.
That's real talk.
Dismissive or avoidant attachment. I don't care. I ain't want him no way. 5 lines up ready to take his place.
Right.
Oh, my God. Are y'all serious right now?
I like
y'all laughing because you reflected on sophomore year in undergrad. You be like, yo, that's what was wrong with her. She had attachment issues. I didn't even know. That was what was going on. That's what was going on. Fearful, avoidant. And yes, it is possible to develop new attachment styles, but you have to first acknowledge that you have some issues with attachment. So I'm going to give you some real quick symptoms, and then I'm going to go on to Ronnie so that he can tell you how to get better. So what we also know about attachment disorders is that they're psychological results of significant social neglect. And what that means is it's the absence of adequate social and emotional caregiving during childhood, a disruption of the formative bond between children and their parents or other caregivers. These disorders, formerly considered a single diagnosis, are now, according to our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, divided into reactive attachment disorder and disinhibited social engagement disorder. And before I give you the symptoms real quick, I want to tell you this. It literally just came to mind as I was thinking. When I look back in retrospect over my own life and my relationship with my mother, I was literally glued to my grandmother's left hip. Well, the reason why I was glued to my grandmother's left hip and worshiped the ground my grandfather walked on is because my grandparents brought me home from the hospital. My mother got out of the hospital and went back to live life a couple of states away where she was living and doing her thing. That's what she was doing. So from birth, the attachment with my mom was broken, which over the course of my life moved a very strange, volatile, and unhealthy relationship with my mother for many, 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 many years. Now, I will say my relationship with my mother today is better. However, there's still a significant room for improvement. And when I look at it through the clinical lens and through my clinical hat as Dr. Pitt, I recognize that the reason why the relationship is what it was and what it still is to a degree is because that attachment, that initial bond that a child needs to have with the birth mother where possible was broken. So some symptoms of the reactive attachment disorder is a child who rarely or minimally seeks comfort when distressed, a child who rarely or minimally responds to comfort when distressed, a mental, social, and emotional responses to others, episodes of unexplained irritability, sadness, or fearfulness, limited expression of positive affect or joy, evidence of inadequate basic emotional and social caretaking. Now, the contrast of that is the disinhibited social engagement disorder, which is a lack of reticence in approaching and interacting with unfamiliar adults. And in layman's terms, what that means is take off the every day, go by. You tell them stranger dater, and they're like, yeah, they're not going to hurt you. They're talking to everybody. Like the cashier at the grocery store could walk off with them, and they would never scream or raise alarm if somebody's kidnapping them. Over familiarity with verbal or physical behaviors such as hugging strangers or sitting on the laps of unfamiliar adults. Willingness to approach a complete stranger for comfort or food, to be picked up or to receive a toy. Diminished or absent checking back with adult caretaker when in unfamiliar situations. And evidence of inadequate social and emotional caretaking, sometimes with a history of repeated changes in the primary caretaker. So that one is the one where we see folks that are clingy as heck adults and emotionally needy. It's like just anybody loves me. You've heard the expression looking for love in all the wrong places. That's where that's going to fall into, under the disinhibited one. Ronnie?
Thank you, Dr. Fitz. So now, while I have no desire in the immediate to pursue my doctorate degree, I will say that attachment theory is something that has become a passion of mine as I've progressed in the mental health field. And I'm going to share a story real quick about how attachment disorders can linger into adulthood. So I'll do a little self-disclosure. So I was raised by both parents. I had a black dad and a white mom. My mom's side of the family, she came from a very physically and verbally abusive household. Her mom was extremely abusive, would send her to school with black eyes, would just call her out her name, whole bunch of stuff. On my dad's side, hardship, low income, very authoritative household. My grandfather, his dad, was in the military back at that time, so you can imagine how it was also having 11 people in the house. So when I was born, one of the things that I've discovered as I've gotten older and become a mental health professional is that one of my mom's goals when she had me was that she made it her point to make sure I was raised the complete opposite way she was raised, meaning that I got praised all the time. I was told I was doing a good job. I got what you would consider microwave gratification, instant gratification all the time growing up. As I got older, I realized how detrimental that instant gratification was. And that instant gratification lingered over in all areas of my life. As a academic person, I would beat myself up, or if I didn't have my mom right there to, sit there and encourage me or help me with my schoolwork, I didn't feel like I was smart enough or good enough to do it by myself. Now, football, on the other hand, was a little bit different, but I still yearned for instant gratification in football. With football, my sole purpose not my sole purpose, but one of the main motivating factors in football for me was to not get yelled at by the coaches. Because if I felt like if you yelled at me, if I felt like you were to get on me or something, I've let you down. That means I've disappointed you. That means you don't want nothing to do with me anymore. I would feel like you would just dismiss me. So that was one of my motivating factors. That turned into me having a very decent football career. I got a lot of individual praise, team awards and stuff like that. But, that was one of my motivating factors. When I finished playing football, I realized as an adult how much not getting that instant gratification or not being able to be told you're doing a good job all the time by a parent affects you. I would get easily frustrated. I would get defeated really quick. I would feel like I can't do this. It took a lot of self-reflection and a lot of learning how to stave off instant gratification and understand that, I'm doing this because this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, I'm pretty sure my wife wouldn't mind me sharing this. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she came from a household where there was no instant gratification or no praising or anything like that. As a result, in her adult life, because of that lack of attachment to her family, her caregivers and stuff like that, there was a lot of insecurities that she's had to work through. So me and my wife come from the opposite ends of the spectrum when we talk about attachment. I was telling Dr. Pitts and Jared that I have a very close friend of mine, known him since middle school. He was raised in a single-parent household. And he also, as I've gotten older and I know what attachment disorders and stuff look like, he has severe attachment disorders. He was somebody who would cling on to any female that would show him any type of interest instantly. And if things were going south, his mood changed. There were even times in high school, there was a female he had clinged on to. Me and some of my friends, we had thought that he had sent us a suicide text. He had left school, sent us this long text about how he didn't want to come back to school. It didn't make any sense. The girl didn't like him anymore. I mean, he was really upset by her turning him down. So I always find it, being a clinician and being a mental health professional, I always find it funny, and Dr. Pitts, you can chime in on this if you want to, while we heavily rely on the DSM-5 to help us understand these diagnoses and how to help treat people, one of the things that Dr. Pitts hinted at was that attachment disorders kind of phase out at 18 when you become an adult. But as I've just shared with you, and as a lot of other people in the mental health profession know, that attachment disorders linger over into adulthood, just like conduct disorder lingers over into adulthood, ADHD lingers over into adulthood. All these things that aren't addressed or aren't taken care of as a child, they linger over into adulthood. And that bothers me because, like Dr. Pitts shared with everybody, not having that attachment or not having that natural caregiving from a parent can affect you into your adulthood. So what are some things that can help with that? Well, one of the first things, like we talk about every week, if you feel like you fall into this category of where, I have a hard time forming relationships, or I have a hard time trusting other people, or I have a hard time trusting myself around other people, or building these lifelong relationships and things like that, or finding love, finding my husband or wife or whatever the case may be. If you feel like any of these apply to you, definitely please seek a mental health professional's help. So for parents with children who might have a hard time with praise, I'm going to list off some things for you as far as praise goes that can be kind of like a soundboard for you to determine how to give praise for a child. And understand this, when I say this, praise is subjective. All right, there's no blanket statement on how to give praise or everybody should give praise to their children and teenagers like this. Praise is specifically subjective, and it's up to the parents to also know their flaws with attachment and encouragement and praise and stuff like that. If you're the parent and you are somebody who struggled with attachment or not getting enough praise or too much praise as a child, and now you're an adult getting ready to have a kid or have a child, that's something as the adult they should be very aware of too. So when we talk about praising the process and not the person. So what does that look like? So, for example, if you have a child who made you a little arts craft or something like that, as opposed to saying, you did a great job, the art looks great. Say, your effort going into this art project was phenomenal. You gave great effort. Pay close attention to your child's process. Like I said, everybody's praise is different. So how your child does things can determine what type of praise you give them. Children pick up on the things very quick. So if you're somebody who's giving your child praise for doing one thing, they might get fixed on that one thing and always want to do that to get your approval and stuff, and that might deter them from trying new things. Another thing, and this is probably one of the most important ones, don't praise by comparison. For example, let's say you're giving your child swimming lessons and they jump into the pool first and their friend didn't. So you tell your child, hey, you did such a great job. You were very brave jumping in the pool when your friend didn't. Don't compare them. Now, studies have shown that by doing this type of praise comparison, it might start to make kids have to be competitive with one another. Compete for praise and things like that, especially with siblings, especially when the younger sibling, or if you have more than two siblings, you always hear about the middle child being left out and stuff like that. That might start to elicit competition amongst the siblings or friends. So be very careful of that. Rather than praise, offer descriptive feedback. And this kind of transitions into one of my treatment options. So, when I talk about treatment options, we always talk about psychotherapy or talk therapy, doing cognitive behavioral therapy and something like that. But what I've started to do more research on, and I don't know if Dr. Pitts, if this is something that you employ well in your services, but what I've noticed is, for as far as attachment, play therapy is one of the leading techniques that therapists use to help children with attachment disorders. Play therapy is exactly what it sounds like. Play therapy is play. It's basically you'll have a child come into your office or playroom, for example, and the session is kind of geared around them playing and stuff. Oftentimes, children have a very hard time describing how they feel, what they got going on, what's in their mind and stuff like that. But if you watch
Ronnie,
a child
hold up
play,
for a second. You're choppy. Does
it sound better now?
What happened? Yeah, much better.
Sound better.
How does it sound now?
Good.
Can you hear me?
You're good. Go ahead.
Good?
Yeah, perfect.
So children have a hard time verbally expressing their emotions and feelings and stuff like that. One of the things play therapy does is, by play, oftentimes children can tell you exactly what's going on and how they're feeling by playing with dolls, playing with sand, playing with the bop them towards the little boxing gloves and things like that. That's basically the main way a child expresses himself is through play. So one of the big techniques in play therapy is what we call the TEAL technique, which is tracking, empathy, encouragement, and limit setting. You'll do this with a child to basically give them the power of the session. We call it child-centered play therapy. So during these type of sessions, it's up to the child to lead the session, what they want to do, what they want to talk about. As that therapist or as that clinician, it's your job. What we call tracking is you're tracking what they do as opposed to how they did it. So let's say, for example, a child's making a painting or something. You're saying, "Ooh, I like how you put that orange beside that purple. It's very interesting." Or, "I like how you picked up that big bucket of sand and brought it over there." Tracking, giving praise to their actions as opposed to specifically what it is they're doing can help with that, giving equal amount of praise without giving over praise. So play therapy is one of the biggest things you can help children with. And for adults, like I said, if this is not treated in childhood or your adolescence years, as adults, if you recognize this, please go find a therapist or mental health professional to help you with this because, like Dr. Pitt said, this can leak into every avenue of your life, relationships, work, personal life, things like that. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in the world we live in, is everybody going to have the opportunity to be raised by both parents in a loving environment? No. We're not unrealistic here. So if you feel like you know somebody or if you've been in these type of environments, please seek professional help because there's no instant cure. It takes a lot of work. And I tell that as adults all the time. If you're an adult and you're going to see a therapist, it's up to you to also put in that work as well. And oftentimes, accountability is a hard thing for a lot of people going into therapy to realize is we have to be self-accountable for our actions as well in order for things to change. So if you feel like you or a loved one has been affected by an attachment disorder, please seek out Dr. Pitts or myself or any practitioner in your state or area and start working on this.
Yeah. So, disclosure, Dr. Pitts has attachment issues. I certainly fell into that disinhibited category where it wasn't extreme in flocking to strangers or anything like that, but you've all heard me say in previous episodes that I love very, very hard. So I definitely have been labeled emotionally high maintenance before, and it was, a combination of the broken attachment and strained relationship with my mom, but also growing up without my biological father and all the guilt and shame that I had internally because all of it was internalized. It was internalized. It adversely impacted my self-esteem, my self-worth, and all of that. So I was one of those individuals that looked for love in all the wrong places, which is why I was so promiscuous at such a young age. I was just looking for somebody, anybody, to love me. And what ended up happening is I ended up being attached to far too many individuals that validated the low opinion of myself that I had in the hopes that they were going to fill that void of love and attention and value and respect and appreciation that, truth be told, we all long for to a degree. But my quest for it was presented in such an unhealthy way. But then to take it one step further, it became even healthier because the damage that the broken attachment did on my psyche when I, for example, was in the committed relationship with Andre's father, who always went above and beyond to try to love me based upon how I deserved to be loved and not based on how I had been loved, I self-sabotaged that because the damage that the attachment had done was that I don't deserve to be loved this way. There's something wrong with me. Why would he love me? Why would he respect me? Why would he care about me? So all of the efforts that he made to show me, and again, we were young, but he always saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And He loved me properly, but I destroyed that because I engaged in behavior that compromised that and created this space where when you're dealing with attachment disorder, what you end up doing is you alienate people. That neediness, that self-sabotaging behavior, and I think you made this, you alluded to this point, Ronnie. What ends up happening is that you engage in these behaviors that push people away, or either connects you and attaches you to people that validate the low opinion that you have of yourself. So now you have this vicious cycle that is going to carry over into adulthood. It's inevitable if you don't get help. I started seeing a mental health practitioner when I was 18 years old. I'm 53. And when I say has attachment issues, again, full disclosure, but I'm engaged to an amazing man. I really, 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 truly am. And I will tell you, though, there are times, few and far between, but there are still times where he reminds me, babe, you deserve to be loved properly. Babe, you deserve to be made a fuss over. He just said it this morning. He'll say, have I told you lately that you're a big deal? I'm like, no. But he does.
That's a great. I'm glad you made that point, though. Now, Can I ask you a quick question about that? You said you started seeing a mental health practitioner at 18. How long? Well, first of all, were you consistently seeing a mental health practitioner when you started at 18, or was it kind of like here and there?
So it was here and there, but here and there for long periods of time. Because what we tell our clients is, you're not going to need us forever, or maybe you will. But there's ebbs and flows to the therapeutic relationship, right? So you go into therapy working on issue A and B, and you find some resolve. We teach appropriate coping skills. We teach, people how to get revelation and greater insight as to what's going on with them. And we teach our clients how to deal with their stuff, right? And then life happens, and something may trigger and they may regress, or something new happens that causes something else to rise up. So as I progressed from 18 up until now at 53, different things happened that I would have a period of time where I wasn't seeing a therapist and I was doing fine, or so I thought. And then something would happen and I would resume seeing, the same therapist or a new therapist. I will tell you that I have not been in treatment since 2013. 2013 was the last time that I was in treatment, but I will also tell you that the reason why I haven't been in treatment since then isn't because I don't have stuff that I'm working on. I don't know about at your agency, Ronnie, but at every agency that I've worked for, and even when I was in grad school, we are encouraged as mental health practitioners to have a mental health practitioner of our own. Why? Because the nature of our work is extremely toxic. It is extremely toxic, and it takes its toll. So just so our viewing and listening audience is aware, it's not that Dr. Pitts doesn't have a therapist. I do. They're called my mentors because as a clinician, I have superior clinicians that I work with collaboratively every single solitary day that are part of my treatment team, and two of them serve in a supervisory capacity, if you will, where every single week I have supervision anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, where one of the goals of that is Dr. Pitts' self-care. What's going on with you? How's the family? How's the relationship? How's the kids? What is going on with you? How is COVID impacting you? How are finances? Those very personal, intimate things that can adversely impact our psyche, those are being addressed on a weekly basis in a professional setting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jared, real quick, you've listened to me and Dr. Pitts talk in great depth about attachment disorders and stuff like that. So, you being an adult and being out here in the everyday world, is this something that you might find, whether I don't know if you're in a relationship or not, but if you come across a young lady that you're interested in, is this something that you've ever seen before and you've just been like, man, she's super clingy, or man, why is she tripping over this? Why is she so insecure and stuff like that? Because I'll be honest, and this is something a lot of attractive females out here, I feel like, suffer from this a lot. Suffer from the lack of attachment or lack of praise growing up, and we see it bleed over into adulthood all the time. Is this something that you have seen in your own personal life, or is attachment something that you've dealt with in your own personal life as well?
That's a question, because I was going to ask this question, because Dr. Pitts has said something about attachment disorders having to do with being high maintenance. Did you mean high maintenance, like what did you mean by high maintenance?
So when I say emotionally high maintenance, I mean there's this persistent neediness for attention, for validation, for we're human, right? You want to hear a compliment from time to time, but if you're with that female or that male that needs you telling them 24/7 that you love them, that they're good looking, that you can't live without them, that that I'm so proud of what you did in work today. I'm so proud that what I call overkill need for attention and praise and validation, it's a strong likelihood that there's an attachment issue going on.
Yeah, I've had that in one relationship where it was like,
you knew he was going to say, yeah, Ronnie.
It's like the
man looked like Genuine. They don't want to let go.
I just can't sing. If I could sing it, it might be on another level. But but it was like that attachment issue where it was like attention, very attention based. Even to this day, we're not together, but I still see it like on social media, and like even my mom had said something to me the other day about it. Like when she seen it pop up on social media, and it was just like, oh, I can't stand, what I'm saying, I can't stand it and stuff like that. But I see it, and she did come from a situation where it was a lot of issues like in the family, and that's one reason why I kind of broke it off, because I'm like, I'm not gonna get in a relationship where that family issue is going to impact me and you potentially if we were to have a child. And that's why I stopped it there, because it was a whole lot of issues. And then I've had relationships where it hasn't, like, the girl hasn't been in a place where she needs me to say anything to her. You know what I'm saying? It's like self-confident. But when I look back at it, her family was honestly the best family that I've been around, like, while being in a relationship. Where it's like, man, I could walk into this family tomorrow and everything is perfect. So I think that does have some relevance. And I never thought about it like that. But yeah, I see. I mean, it's especially in college, you see it a lot. In college, you see it a lot. It's a whole lot.
Did you have any teammates who were very like?
What happened?
Did you have any teammates, any males that you saw that might have attachment issues that you were just like, bro, what's going on? Why are you tripping like this? Or why are you acting like a little girl or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think even like, I probably was in a situation where, I don't know if it's just in your relationship where you talk and it look like it might break off and you're like, don't, you know what I'm saying? And you're kind of like saying, don't do this, don't do that. But I'm trying to think of teammates. I mean, colleges, I've just seen issues where it's been like maybe like aggressive towards each other. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's
typically what you'll see, especially in male. Aggression is always our answer for emotion. That's something that we always. I don't want to be emotional, but I can fight. I'll fight you before I tell you how I really feel. That's kind of our defense mode. Dr. Pitts, I have one more question for you. When we talk about attachment, and the last couple of years I've been seeing people talk about their 5 love languages and stuff like that. For your clients that you work with or people that you talk to in general, do you make any correlation with the 5 love languages and attachment? Or, like, how do you work with that when people come to you, like, saying, well, my love language is words of affirmation, or my love language is acts of service or gifts and stuff like that?
I do. I do use the 5 love languages. I particularly use it when I'm doing premarital counseling or couples and marriage counseling, because we know that the 5 love languages, I mean, it's communication. It is what is your love communication style. And I think that people need to understand that so that they can know coming in how to communicate effectively with the person, because, I mean, let's face it, communication is a foundational principle of a healthy and successful relationship. So I absolutely, positively use it. You know, I don't use it when I'm working with children, but certainly recognizing, I do, to your point about play therapy and stuff like that, I do play therapy, but I also do a lot of role play. I do a lot of role play and a lot of behavioral modification and modeling for my patients to teach them properly how to use attachment. I wanted to make this point, too, before we move on to HBCU business, and we'll wrap that up real quick so we can get into this Bill of Rights. Attachment issues have come into play in my friendships as well. Attachment issues actually led to my mother questioning my sexuality when I was in high school, because the females, some of them, 2 in particular, let me clear that up before I get cussed out and hate mail from my crew. 2 females in particular that I was really close to when I was growing up, looking back now in retrospect, they each had attachment issues. And I can, even though it hurt me to my core because my mom came at me kind of hateful about it, but I can see now, looking back in retrospect, looking at the friendships through a clinical lens, why she thought maybe something more may have been going on, because they were both hooked in me and holding on like freaking lovers, scorned lovers. Like, I mean, jealous of each other because they felt like I was spending more time with one person than that. Like, it was crazy. So then my mom was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing today?" What the hell? What do you mean? I'm inviting him over for movies and food. That's all. What are you talking about? But she really did. It was concerning to her because she felt like attachment that my female friends had to me was unhealthy. And then it also brings to mind, I remember when my former husband and I were little, his mom used to say, "The attachment between you two is sick." We were in elementary school, and she was saying that the attachment between us is sick because we were the Black Forrest and Jenny. We were freaking inseparable when we were little, and it's looking back now, and I'm like, yeah, that was a warning sign. There was about to be problems. But he had attachment issues. I had attachment issues, so we were like peas and carrots.
Do twins have attachment issues? Because I dated a twin, and it was like hell when the other twin was not in a relationship when I was dating a twin. It was terrible.
I can't answer that definitively. Because I think there's so many other things that come into play that have to be considered with that. But certainly if you're talking about identical twins, then I think it's a reasonable hypothesis that there may be some things that have to be taken into consideration because they're twins and how that impacted because of the connection, particularly the connection that twins have, I think certainly would be relevant. I want to move on real quick because we clearly, as y'all can see, we could take a whole 2-3 shows talking about attachment. We may need to extend today's show by a couple of minutes just to make sure we get this information in. The other thing that we're doing is we're talking about HBCUs in the news, and folk have been in an uproar all week because Howard University named Rin Yu their new editor-in-chief. And, there's an outcry, if you will, from the Black and brown community, across the nation about this selection. And to everybody's surprise, I actually have mixed emotions about it. I think that it is a discussion that should be an objective discussion. And though I respect some people's opinions on the issue, I think that to a degree their position on it might be subjective. And the reason why I say that is because, again, I'm looking at this through a clinical lens, okay? I'm reminded of when I was a therapist for inpatient at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center, and there were a lot of clients who just did not have any respect for my clinical expertise because I'm not a recovering addict and have never had any issues with substance use or abuse. And what I said was, how's that working out for you? How's that working out for you with you wanting to take all of your advice from somebody who's exactly like you? Though I understand the argument that everybody has this outrage in the HBCU community, I also wonder if part of the reason of making this move is because not making light of the resume of a black or brown person that could have very easily served as editor-in-chief as well, but also taking into consideration there's a lot of information that we just simply don't know that wasn't made available to the public. We don't know who her competition was. We don't know if those that she was up against didn't have as stellar a track record as Ren Yu did. You know, the argument is because she's Asian, and I was telling the guys as we were, conducting our research, total transparency, I didn't know exactly what an editor-in-chief's responsibility is or was. So I looked it up, and it says the editor-in-chief is the highest-ranking member of the editorial team at a publication. They manage the team of writers and editors, determine the look and feel of the publication, decide what to publish, and oversee the publication's operations and policy. Now, some of the arguments that I heard about this was if to suggest that she was the one that was going to be doing all of the writing herself, just not her role. Her role is to oversee that, to make sure that what is coming forth is a stellar product that is going to get this information out there to appropriately impact our communities. And I think to suggest that she can't do that effectively because she's of Asian descent, I think is doing her a great disservice. And it brings to mind, how would I feel if I'm at a PWI and, there's this class on whatever, and or a department that they want me to direct, and the dominant culture faculty members on that campus say, oh, well, how's she going to do that? She's black. She's not Jewish. An ethnic minority is an ethnic minority. And though her experience might not be that of ours as people of color, isn't it a reasonable and fair assumption that she has the ability? And here's the thing, and I'm making, I don't know this one, let me just put the disclaimer there. I don't know this woman from a can of paint, but I've been discriminated against as a woman of color. I've been discriminated against, and thinking that I couldn't do as good a job as a white person because of whatever. So what I'm saying is this woman's record is stellar. She is absolutely positively stellar. And the president of the university, based upon everybody that she was up against, felt as though she was the best possible candidate to take the university to the next dimension. Isn't that notable? I think that we have to be very, very careful in isolating ourselves from those that have the ability to contribute to our forward advancement, perhaps because they don't look like us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so you can take Bill and Melinda Gates' money, for example, but you don't want their input? on how to manage your money.
That's true. Ain't nobody mad when that's Bezos.
Yeah, go ahead.
Know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody mad when Bezos' wife or ex-wife gave money and she not black.
No.
That's
you
right.
can give us money, but we don't want your expertise. Come on.
That was one of the points I had made when that had came out. You know, it was like we talked about, you know, how HBC, we feel like some of them are being gentrified and stuff like that. And, I mean, let's be real. You know, I mean, yes, she's of Chinese descent and stuff like that, but let's be all the way real with it. We also know where people of Chinese descent actually come from, the motherland, many centuries ago. So it ain't like it's a far-fetched, like, you know, yes, she's a person of color and stuff like that. She's still a descendant of, you know, the motherland and things like that. So, you know, we'll see what she does. If she does the job, you know, very well, and, you know, the magazine is popping, I think it's, you know, I think it'll work. I think it's.
Here's the other thing, too, before we move on. I think that what has not been given consideration, or at least I haven't heard it in any of the public arguments about the discontent about her hiring, is that we don't know how open and receptive this woman is to learning about our culture. We don't know that. Let's just say hypothetically, let me be the advocate here for a moment for her. If in fact she is so culturally sensitive and so mortified by the horrific atrocities that we see going on across the nation today against us as a people, if she agrees with us that what happened at the Capitol building would have been a revisit of Rosewood and a massacre, a bloodbath, that they would have still been cleaning the blood off the walls and floor of the Capitol building had those insurgents been black people and brown people. If she is as horrified by what we've seen unfolding since January 6th as we are, is it possible that the reach that she has the ability to have our voice heard through Howard University's magazine, unlike anything that's ever been heard coming off of that magazine ever before?
Right, that's true.
They don't know who she's connected to. They don't know what her reach is. They don't know what additional resources and advocacy that she could do for us as a people beyond her role as editor-in-chief. And with a track record and stellar record like this, she could work for anybody. Know that.
True. She might have a black uncle.
Right along. Go ahead, Derek. Finish your thought.
Anyways, and Ronnie and I are shouting out some businesses that are owned by HBCU alums, and me kind of staying on track with the clothing line. Jerry Lorenzo is the American fashion and sneaker designer who founded the American luxury streetwear label Fear of God, which a lot of people out there, especially maybe millennials, you've heard of Fear of God. They have over 1 million followers on Instagram. He actually attended FAMU. So I've been seeing this clothing line for years, and I never would have thought that it came from a HBCU. Never, did my research. But Fear of God, that's their Instagram as well. They have a lot of shoes. They just signed a deal with he just signed a deal with Adidas. So that shows, how they are, and all of that is coming from, of course, the HBCU. So that's my shout out, Fear of God, FAMU.
Nice.
So this week, my shout out is one of my best friends. We actually had him on the show back in September. It's the top of the year, so we know the top of the year is New Year's resolutions, and the number one New Year's resolution is normally to get back in shape or to get in shape for the first time. So my good friend and alumnus of Virginia State University, Carlton Harris, has two companies. The first one is Athlete Scene, where he specializes in nutrition performance, digital workout plans designed to maximize the performance and health for everyone from athletes to everyday individuals. And coming soon, he also has Athlete Scene Academy, which is an online education in sports management, exercise science, and sports media, providing certification programs in sports performance and rehabilitation, personal training, and sports broadcast. You can check out his Instagram page and Facebook page at Athlete Scene, and Scene is SCENE. And then also www.athletescene.com. And you can also call him at 888-37-SCENE. That's 888-37-SCENE.
Nice one. A shout out. He was supposed to come on the show, wasn't he? One day.
Yeah, he came back on. I think that was the day I think you had. I don't think you were on the show that day, but yeah, he came.
That was the day you were selling a really big house.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Cool.
That's right. Yep.
And y'all held it down. Y'all held it down as usual. But now we're gonna jump into, after all that great information, we're gonna jump into the topic of today, which is something that is definitely major, and it's the College Athletes Bill of Rights. And the College Athletes Bill of Rights is a little separate from what people initially believe is just being athletes being paid. That's what I thought of. So I did my research, and it goes a lot deeper, and it's really focused on the nurture and the care of the student athlete on campus and once they depart from their campus and move on in life. And that is which a lot of coaches come into living rooms or come into schools and tell the parents, we'll treat them like family. I think this is really, depending on what happens with this Athletes Bill of Rights, is really a testament to, are we really treated like family or are we being used, as we mentioned before. So we're going to discuss what is the College Athletes Bill of Rights. Does it apply to HBCU athletes? Do college athletes have control over their rights of publicity? And what are some facts about athletic scholarships? So we're going to dive into all of that. And I just want to say of Kevin Booker, who is a senator in New Jersey, he's a Democrat, and his quote, coming from somebody who played college football at Stanford, he played receiver or tight end, I believe. But he said, as a former college athlete, this issue is personal to me. The NCAA has failed generations of young men and women, even when it comes to the most basic responsibility, keeping the athletes under their charge, healthy and safe. So that's coming from the senator of New Jersey, who also had ran for president, and that's his take on it. And he's the one that's at the forefront of this Bill of Rights conversation. So we're going to talk about all that today, get into the nitty-gritty of it, details, as always, and ready to get it going. What's your guys' take on that, or anything, any input y'all wanted to say up front?
Well, I just want to give
go ahead, Dr. Pitt.
I'm just real quick. Cory Booker is, he's Jersey. He's Jersey all day. Y'all know that's my home state, even though I don't live in New Jersey anymore, so I just want to give that love. My fiance has actually met Cory Booker, and he was saying that he is just a really, really, really good dude. And he said, I wish you could have had him on the show, and just by design of how down to earth he is, he said more than likely he would have come, but, and I said, with everything that's going on in the nation's capital right now, I just didn't think that it was even appropriate to reach out. So, hopefully at some point in time in the future, trust and believe, I will reach out and see if we could get him to come on the show and we can revisit this once things have settled down a little bit politically, because, D.C.'s freaking politically on fire right now. So just wanted to show some love to Senator Cory Booker for even introducing this and seeing the value in this document and this effort that he has put in place, and has so many other people behind him in supporting this. I'm going to let y'all dominate the discussion on this, but I just wanted to say that this framework is endorsed by the United Steelworkers, the National College Players Association, the Sports Fans Coalition, Color of Change, College Athletes for No More Names, College Athletes Unity, Athletes Igniting Action, the Coalition for African Diaspora Student Athletes, and the authors of NCAA Exploitation No More. So have at it, gentlemen, and I'll chime in whenever you want me to.
For sure.
So,
go ahead, Ron.
Just my initial thoughts on it. I was joking with Dr. Pitts when I first called in this morning. When we had talked about that this was going to be our talking point for this week, I had looked it up a couple of nights ago to so are we creating a Bill of Rights to talk about, or is there already one created? Because I hadn't heard anything about it. So I had looked it up, and to my surprise, here was this illustrious plan or Bill of Rights for namesake that was introduced last year. And when I was reading through it, I was like, man, this is on paper it sounds beautiful. On paper it sounds long overdue, very needed. I just, knowing that the NCAA, at the end of the day, they care about their bottom line, they care about business at the end of the day, and not necessarily the student athletes. I pray that, those who support this bill and, the 10 senators who introduced this legislation, I hope they do right by the student athletes. I think this could be very groundbreaking and change the way we look at college athletics forever. But I also have some concerns. I have some concerns about the stipulations in there and how truly fair it will be spread out across the 3 divisions. Like we've talked about in past shows, as you go down in divisions, there's less resources, there's less revenue being generated. Mm-hmm. So just from what I've read about the Student Athlete Bill of Rights is this is more hyper-focused on Division I athletics, and specifically from what I read in the article, the only sports they were really focusing on was football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, and it was one other sport, I can't think of it, that they were only looking at that this would be applied to. So right then and there, I have some concerns like, what about the other student athletes? And, granted, let's be real here, like we talked about in previous shows, if you're generating money, you should be compensated somehow. If you're not generating money, that's just the nature of the beast, because other sports like, softball, hockey, things like that. Well, hockey generates for the professional level, but as far as college goes, as far as being professional in that field, you're really not generating a lot of money. So it's really no difference in college than it would be professionally. So I like it on paper. I would love to see, because I think they're actually supposed to vote on this month in Congress. They were supposed to come up like, are we going to finalize this? Because Florida's voting this month, and as we know, California, Governor Gavin Newsom he was the first governor in the United States to approve this back in September 2019. So you have two big football states who have already approved this, and I think Florida, starting this fall, is going to be the first state to actually unveil this as, I don't think they're going to, of course, not a recruiting tool. I don't think they'll publicly say that, but we might start to see some Florida schools have advantages over the other 49 states who haven't enacted this yet. So I'm really interested in to see how it works.
Yeah, it seems like
quick, Jared, I'm sorry, real quick. I just wanted to tell our audience who don't know what the College Athletes Bill of Rights provides. Fair and equitable compensation, enforceable evidence-based health, safety, and wellness standards, improved educational outcomes and opportunities, comprehensive health care coverage and support with sport-related injuries, accountability across college sports, and that was the point. And then just wanted to point out to your point about the money, it says, though college athletes power a $15 billion industry featuring billion-dollar media deals, million-dollar coaching salaries, and luxury facilities rivaling those in professional leagues, college athletes are blocked from sharing in any of the profit they help create. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, and then going back off what Dr. Fitz said, and then also from Ronnie, it seems like you don't feel confident that it'll come to fruition just because of the historical pattern of the NCAA.
Yeah,
you mean
I really don't trust a lot of the
level.
Say that
you
again.
Mean at the HBCU level, Jared, or period?
Period.
You was like, yeah, that is.
Yeah, honestly, at the HBCU level, and I've been very vocal about this in the past on this show and with some of my friends and stuff like that. I feel like at the HBCU level, I really couldn't see it happening. I don't see how, unless the NCAA made it to where, they're splitting the revenue amongst all 3 divisions and not just Division I. Then I'd be like, all right, cool. At least HBCUs will get some of the pie. They might not get a big piece, but they'll get some of the pie because they're not getting some of the pie at all right now. So that's my biggest concern. And like we always say, the HBCUs we shouted out on the show the last 4 months, a lot of them have some very heavy hitters as alumni. So, once again, it kind of falls like, student athletes are kind of relying on the NCAA like how everyday citizens rely on the government. They're waiting to be bailed out as opposed to taking action themselves. So as far as HBCUs goes, my challenge has always been alumni. It's up to us to be the change we want to see on our campuses, whether it's for athletics, academics, the whole 9 yards. So that's my biggest concern for HBCUs. As far as the whole gamut goes, I don't think it's going to get approved as quickly as people think it is. You know, like I said, originally they were supposed to vote on this month, but I haven't heard anything talked about it on the news or C-SPAN or anything like that. So I don't know if that's going to get pushed back because of what's been going on. But I just know the NCAA. I just looked it up how much revenue the NCAA made after all expenses and stuff like that. They profited $995 million in 2016. That's after scholarships, expenses, everything. They profited almost $1 billion for pure revenue.
And
you know,
that's
I don't know. Go ahead, Jared.
Topic, because you made a good point where some people may think of where they're getting this money, how they're getting this money, like don't they have scholarships to account for? But the profit share, because the students will have a profit share only from the sports that Ronnie mentioned. You'll have a profit share, which will be from the revenue from the season that exceeds the cost of scholarships across the entire division. So once it exceeds, then they pay off the scholarship and things like that. That's the profit that's left that they would give. And clearly, $995 million is, I mean, that's a lot of money. It's basically $1 billion. So I don't think they can use the fact that we have to, eating into our profit, we don't have any money left. And then another thing that's important with the Bill of Rights, athletes will be able to sign brand deals. So that's different than just paying an athlete. Now you can get paid. Now you can get a Nike. Like, what if Nike started sponsoring college athletes or Adidas and things like that? That's another factor there. And then you're no longer restricted to wear any type of brand or shoe while you're with mandatory team activities. So you can wear whatever you want. You don't have to listen to what your coach says about which shoes to wear, what shirts to wear, Jordan, Nike, things like that. And then also, and then the medical trust fund, which is established to provide health care for student athletes up to 5 years from eligibility. I think that's one of the most important things is the health care. Because like Ronnie mentioned so many times with injuries, I had a concussion and like a minor shoulder injury, but I don't think I have anything that's like ailing up until this day, but I know there's guys that are head injuries. NFL is focused on that, but college isn't focused on treatment for head injuries in college. So I think that's probably the main thing that college athletes need.
That needs to be implemented. Go ahead.
Just for my own clarity's sake, the eligibility piece. Can you just real quick, for my sake and for maybe our high school audience, that the eligibility piece? Because I know, Ronnie, you said something about having a year's left of eligibility, and you're not even in college anymore. Can you just explain that real quick, the eligibility piece, and how that would play into what you're saying about the healthcare piece?
So they're saying,
go ahead, Jared.
If I miss it, because I might not have the whole thing, but from my understanding is after your eligibility runs out, you have up to 5 years for that medical plan that they're using. So I don't believe it's a lifetime plan.
Yeah, no, it's not a lifetime. It's for the first 5 years after you. I'm assuming. Now, the article didn't specify whether it's after you graduate or after your playing career is over. I would assume, make it after you graduate. Because typically, for those who aren't sure, so typically when you enroll into college, you get 10 semesters to complete your athletic career. So if you're in school for 10 semesters, after that 10th semester, you've been enrolled in school, you can no longer play sports for that school unless you've had a medical waiver or some type of NCAA waiver that allows you to play a 6-year. So the way the medical thing works is, and I would like for them to be more specific at how that works. So for me, for example, I ended up having another knee surgery 3 years after I played. Under this Bill of Rights, my school would cover that. I wouldn't have had to use my parents' insurance to cover the knee surgery and stuff like that. I think this is something that, even if they can't get everything else pushed through, this should be pushed through this year ASAP. And it needs to be retroactive, honestly, because, surgery is not cheap. And we know how hospitals like to run it up. One of the things that, out of all the terrible things our president has talked about and done over the last 4 years, one of the few things I have liked is him making hospitals disclose how much certain charges are. So now you can go online and look it up. But, as a college student, when I first got out of school, there's no way in hell I could have afforded paying for my knee surgery with my insurance, you know, straight out of pocket. It just wouldn't have been feasible. So I think this is something that, you know, I always feel like we're making an investment in the school and ourselves by being student athletes and performing on the field. Vice versa, the school's making an investment in us saying that even though we don't know how this person is going to perform on a football field or basketball court or baseball field, we're going to invest this much money into you and all these resources. Medical should be covered as a part of that. And I don't know how many people really pay attention to the NFL veterans, but that was one of the things that NFL veterans have argued for decades, is having some type of health care for, you know, retired players, especially the players who played in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, when that's what we consider the golden age of football. You know, a lot of those people, unless they have money saved over or they use their pension from the NFL they get every year, they have no money to cover medical expenses. And we see how broken down and beat up and just chewed out their bodies and their brains are by the time they get, you know, 40, 50, 60. So why do they think that student athletes, even if you don't go professional, why do they think that this wouldn't apply to us as well? You know, I put my body on the line for 4 years at Virginia State. I mean, with no second guessing, no questioning. I went out there and banged heads for 4 years, put my body through hell for 4 years. And if I go over there now and be like, hey, look, my shoulder messed up, my knee hurt, they're going to look at me and be like, well, you did that. We ain't got nothing to do with that. Right. So I think.
And by the way, we gave you a scholarship to do it.
Exactly. You know, so I think the medical piece needs to be pushed through.
Yeah, because there's some other research show that in NCAA there are 20,718 football injuries a year. And of those, 841 are spinal injuries. So we're not talking about a sprain or a dislocated pinky. We're talking life-threatening that can affect your ability to even work down the line. And then there are about 4,000 knee injuries per year in college, which can cost up to $11,000 to repair. So these injuries are life-changing, life-threatening. And there was more numbers where once you graduate, they have something that's implemented now, but it's really ineffective because it says you can get money towards your hospital bills, but it cannot. If it doesn't go over $90,000 for one type of injury, doesn't work, and if it's not over, I think $127,000, you cannot get money from the NCAA. So it's like, okay, my injury, it costs $80,000, but I can't get help. It got to be $90,000 for me to get surgery and things like that. And that's why I think I see doubt in this whole thing, like Ronnie mentioned, because they're showing right now no empathy and no care to the student athletes. And then the other thing is it affects the transfer rules as well with this Bill of Rights, and it also affects NFL prospects that go and put their name in the draft early. They actually can come back and play the next season. I don't know if you guys saw that. But it says that.
You mean if they don't get drafted, Jared?
Yeah, it says for those who turn pro, they can declare for the draft with the ability to return to college athletics within 7 days of the draft's completion, as long as they did not get paid by a professional team. So,
now I wonder, real quick, Jared, I wonder if that will fall in, like, you know how some teams will fly you out and stuff like that to try out. Yeah. I wonder if that counts too. Like if for the Panthers call and say, hey, we'll fly you out to Charlotte to work out and stuff like that. I wonder if the NCAA would consider that being paid by an NFL team, because the NBA has already enacted something like that several years ago, where college basketball players can, I think, all the way up until the draft, I believe, can elect to go back to college basketball if they feel like they're not going to get drafted.
Right. So. And I never thought about it. I probably thought about it before, but if a player was to put their name in a draft and they don't get drafted, even if they don't go to a mini camp and they're a junior, they can't come back and play at all?
For football, I think that's how it works. For football, I think football is the only sport like that. I don't know the specific rules of how that works if you declare for the draft. No, matter of fact, I don't know the specifics, but I think for football, if you declare for the draft, there's a cutoff day that you can take it back. It's like maybe March or April. I know it's before the draft. I would have to look it up, and we can report on that next week. But yeah, I think the NFL, that's kind of long overdue because I feel like if you're at a Division I program, if you know you're not going to be first or second round, you might want to come back because you know, of course, at a bigger school, you have more opportunities. Now, if you're D2 or D3 and they're like, hey, look, you got a chance between rounds 5 and 7. Hey, look, you got to take your chances because that's the best it's going to get. You know, just being real, that's as good as it's going to get. To your point, Jared, about the transfer rule, and I was reading about that. And we kind of touched on that a couple weeks ago where, you know, I described for people how the transfer process works, you know, sitting out a year or even for the CIAA in Division II, if you transfer within the conference, you got to sit out 2 athletic seasons, which is just absolutely ridiculous because coaches can up and leave at any point. My only thing about the whole transferring thing, and I felt this way even in high school because I was at a high school where our coaches were absolute trash. But I always, you know, my dad used to sit there and say, if you're good enough, you'll be seen. And I think that's like a real old people saying, you know, if you're good enough, you'll be seen because, you know, like I said, I'm still part of the generation where we had to send off DVDs and stuff like that. So I was always told if you're good enough, you'll be seen. The only thing I don't like about the whole transfer thing is it starts to question that maybe that student athlete's integrity, depending on the situation. Like, let's look at James Harden, for example. James Harden wanted all these other stars to come into Houston and stuff like that. They all left. The only common denominator was James Harden, so clearly he was the issue. If you're a player or a student athlete in high school or college, and pay attention when I say this, after a couple transfers, people are going to start looking at like, well, the only common denominator is you leaving. You know, you're not going to run into every situation where you got a perfect coach or a perfect program. If you are that good, I don't care. Certain things you can't coach in sports. You can't coach speed, you can't coach size, and you just can't coach talent. If you have any one of those 3, you will get seen. It's just that simple. Now, I understand transferring, like, when I first got to Virginia State, you know, how it was pitched to me during the recruiting process and how it really was when I got there was night and day. So I definitely was looking at transferring after my freshman year. Fortunately, we got a coach that came in and, you know, changed things around. But in that instance, I just felt like that coach wasn't really invested in the team. So I was looking to go somewhere where they're invested. But I would have had to sit out a year.
Was that Coach Faison?
Was Coach Faison. Shout out. Hey, look, I would say that Coach Faison is a great dude, great person. As far as coaching goes, you know, hey, you know, things change after you've been somewhere for 11 years. You know, things happen, but great all-around person as a man. But, yeah, I feel like that whole transfer thing, I think they should get away with the penalty of you having to sit out. I think if you transfer, you should be allowed to automatically play. However, be careful of just, if you don't like a coach or you don't agree with what they say, all right, I'm going to leave. You know, that's what anything. That's what working, sports, and all that.
I think you'll see more of that, like people unfortunately taking advantage of that and transferring because they could just go and play like they NBA free agent or anything. Another thing which shows that they really are trying to really focus on the care of the student athletes, schools under this bill will be able to provide the student athlete scholarships for however long it takes them to complete undergrad degrees. Because I don't know if you guys know, anyone who's played sport, if you're taking a tough major like chemistry, I heard from somebody it can take like 6 years to graduate undergrad while you're still playing a sport. So your scholarship would end up running out. But now they're giving you the opportunity to fulfill that time frame without being penalized. And then also, this Bill of Rights will prohibit coaches from influencing athletes on their choice of major and from retaliating if the athlete chooses a course of study that they disapprove of. So that will eliminate go to communication. Now you can really focus on the area of study that you really want in college instead of being forced to accommodate your football schedule. So I think this is honestly, I think this is better than paying athletes in my mind. I'd rather student athletes get the Bill of Rights than straight up paying. Yeah, you'll get a profit from the Bill of Rights, but I think they can pay you. The money's going to go. Athletes going to burn through that money. This is kind of setting them up to help them, in the future. That's my opinion on it.
I wanted to touch on the education piece real quick.
Go ahead, Dr.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll come back in.
No, I was just going to say, to your point, Jared, for a major like, of course, biology, chemistry, engineering, something like that, and some of those courses actually require more credits than the standard 120 credits you need to graduate undergrad anyways. My only concern with that is, when you start running into the student athletes, what we used to call GPA players, or those who are, strictly on the team. Now, this might be a more Division I thing than Division II and Division III, because at that level, we need practice players as opposed to GPA players. But I feel like those players who just play the sport because it's just something to do, or they're really not invested in the overall benefit of the team and stuff like that, I think you might run into an issue there where they might, try and finesse or take advantage of that. Of course, you want them to get the degree, but if you're not contributing to what we consider the competent student athlete covering all avenues, that might be an issue. And I don't know if a lot of other people know this, the way the current format is now is, your scholarship, even for me when I was a 4-round scholarship, it got renewed every year. I think for some student athletes, knowing, especially at smaller schools, knowing that my education is going to be guaranteed through the 4 or 5 years or however long I'm here, I think that might relieve some anxiety for them. For me personally, I like the idea of having mine renewed every year because it kind of gave me a motivation to continue to, not only prove the coaches right, but prove myself right that I'm worthy of this scholarship and stuff like that. That's just my opinion. I think it is, I think as student athletes, we should want to get our degree and want to finish. I know the bigger divisions, if you're going pro, hell, you bounce after a year for basketball, after 3 years for football. Some of them don't go back, some do. I think I've seen a trend where more are starting to go back now. And even as far as the money goes, like I said, I think as far as the money goes, I think that should be put in a trust or something for student athletes. They might be able to get some of it, but they don't get a full amount of it because, like we know, just because you finish your degree and get it doesn't qualify you that you're going to get a job of your choice in the workforce. Jobs are at a premium right now. Unemployment is sky high, but people are still graduating in the spring and fall. So, how they work that out will be interesting to see. But I do agree with a lot of your points, Jared.
Yeah, and so back to 90,000. 1 second, Dr. Pitts. Back to the 90,000 number. There's more to it, which says anything less than $90K, the bills must be paid by the athlete's family, but it has to be within 12 months of the injury. So you only can get that benefit if it's within 12 months of your ACL. This is what's in place now, what they're saying is terrible. And then that makes me question, like, the head trauma. If you start having issues, college athletes who have CTE 3 years after you graduate, that 12-month time frame is gone. So it's like stuff is corrupt. Like, that's really – and the thing is, I didn't even know about none of this when I signed my scholarship. So it's like they're not even educating student athletes on any of these rules and regulations at all.
That's what
I had no
for.
idea of that either.
You said what?
That's exactly what pregame is for. And to you guys' point about the graduation piece and going back and finishing your degree, research has shown us that graduation rates for black athletes are significantly lower than white athletes. Just 55% of black male athletes from the Power 5 conferences graduate within 6 years. Even more, some college athletes are pressured toward enrolling in less challenging classes and majors to allow for more time and focus on sports. And I didn't know this, you all probably did, but that their coach can cash in on bonuses associated with higher grade point averages while other colleges engage in academic fraud to keep their athletes eligible. That part I knew. The fraud about for eligibility I was aware of. But I didn't know that coaches could get bonuses when their players have higher GPAs. Oh my goodness!
But that's at the high level. That's Power 5. That's why I said at Division I level. That's why they call them GPA players. I had a player from high school who walked on at UVA because he had a 4.6 GPA in high school. He had no business being on that field at UVA, but he's a practice squad player and he helped keep their GPA up at UVA. So at schools like that, absolutely, them coaches get a bonus for anything. If they field a whole team of 115 players, they probably get a bonus.
Wow,
that's great. So many hidden bonuses that's involved that you don't even know about. Like, that's ridiculous.
And to your point, Dr. Pitts, about black student athletes graduating at a lower rate than white student athletes, I think that kind of ties into what we talk about, not a majority, but a good amount of our black student athletes, their environment they come from and their whole purpose of even playing sports to begin with, because they're just trying to escape from their environment, do better for their family and stuff like that. Yeah. And for basketball, that process is sped up even faster, because in basketball, you only got to play 1 year. 1 year and you're good. You can go to the league. For football, that's 3 years.
Wow.
So you can only imagine. I know people. Well, I did my work in school. I will say that I did my work at Virginia State. I earned my degree. But I do know plenty of other teammates and other student athletes from across campuses. You just had to sign your name on the roll, and you graduated with a 3.5. Hey, you might not know anything about your degree, but you graduated. So, and I think for black student athletes, I think because that's kind of dangled over their head, like, hey, look, here's the professional leagues. We got all these millions of dollars for you. What do you need that degree for? We can get these millions. Focus on these millions. I think that's where you see that correlation and how, and this is educated assumption, but for white student athletes, a lot of them come from more stable environments where they're preached to, being a student athlete is for short term, but you're going to need your education for long term.
Right.
I think that's more preached in the households. It's more conditioned in them. So we see that correlation where they might graduate higher compared to black student athletes. And I think that stat needs to change, over the next decade as well.
Like Dr. Fitz
that's a cultural and systemic issue. Go ahead, Jared.
I was about to say, like Dr. Fitz's favorite line, it's systemic, but you just said it for me.
Yeah, it's a cultural issue. It's a systemic issue. That was actually something that emerged during my dissertation research, in that there are far too many black and brown children who have not been taught the value of education, who don't understand that, as cliche as it sounds, knowledge really is power. An educated person of color is to be feared, and not feared within the context of, oh, I'm going to get over on you, or, oh, you should fear me because I'm going to be violent towards you. But a mind really is a terrible thing to waste. You're good, Jared. I extended this. I mean, we'll finish right at 11:30, but
okay.
A mind really is a terrible thing to waste, and I think that there's so much opportunity, particularly within our impoverished communities. Yeah, particularly within our impoverished communities all across the nation, where there needs to be this revisiting of the value of education and what an appropriate education really, truly means. I got you. With really, truly means within the context of being a successful human being, within the context of being able to be a positive contributor to society. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to shut up because I'm being sarcastic, but I don't want to hear black and brown persons talking about, oh, I went and did this because the commander-in-chief told me to, and I thought that was right. White power. Are you kidding? Okay, I got that. I had to get it out. I had to purge. Okay, Gary, close this out for today with your final thought and point and all of that, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, one more important point about the Bill of Rights for college athletes, the accountability factor. They're going to require an annual public reporting that would track athletic department revenues, salaries, and booster donations, report the number of hours athletes spent on mandatory and voluntary workouts, as well as film study and game travel. And then also, something that I found was interesting is it will also protect athletes from interpersonal violence, physical assault, sexual assault, stalking, domestic abuse. So I think that's important because you see a lot of student athletes getting into situations, especially male athletes with their girlfriends, and they get locked up, they hit me, they rape me, this, that, and the third. And once they leave college, if that's an ongoing issue, like a couple years down the line, is the college still there to protect them, or like what form of protection do these players have And then you're talking about trying to get a lawyer. As a student athlete just coming out, if you found a job or not, you're in a bind now. So I think that's major as well, protecting them from legal disputes that have nothing to do with the sport. So I think altogether, I think the Bill of Rights is something that I think is important. I hope it goes through. With the NCAA, you never know, because at the end of the day, it's going to eat at their profit. And that's what they don't want. As we see with coronavirus, profit is the number one thing, or else none of these teams will be playing football, especially with cases that come up of coronavirus. At the end of the day, money talks. And we'll see, how all that goes. If you guys have any last things to say before we check out.
Fire! Another episode. It's just awesome. I mean, and we say it week in and week out, when you look at where each of us is in our careers and as members of, our respective communities, we know that these conversations that we're having here on Pregame, they're just not happening. They are not happening to the degree that they need to be happening, and that's why we're putting these conversations out there week in and week out. And we want you, our viewing and listening audience, to join these discussions. You can always call us live during the show each week at 515-605-9744. You can email us at htpregame@gmail.com. We want you to download the Heritage Sports Radio Network app so that you can hear us. If you aren't able to catch us live at 11, you can catch us at 10 o'clock on Saturday nights and at 6 o'clock on Sunday nights, because this information is crucial. This information is paramount. This information is needed in order for you to have all of the information that you need to make well-informed decisions about your athletic careers, about your educational careers, and about your mental health. So until next week, we'll see you then. We'll hope to hear from you then. Have a great remaining weekend. Stay safe with all this craziness in the world. And for real, those of y'all that know how to pray, we need prayer. We need divine intervention right about now, because it is bananas out here. Mm-hmm. We'll check y'all out next week. Have a good weekend, folks.